the case of Venezuela. The Trump administration kidnapped the president of Venezuela, but after all, you see, the vice president is in Venezuela. The situation didn't change that much looking at internal and what's going on internally in Venezuela. What was the main goal on the part of Donald Trump? Is it some sort of message to other countries? Is it some sort of, because after all, I don't know if we can say that was a regime change because the whole government is there. Just Maduro was removed from Venezuela. How do you understand the situation there?
Well, and first of all, I understand the situation as an act of lawlessness by the United States government. A lawless act, a shameful act that Americans should be very ashamed of. And it should lead to the impeachment of Donald Trump because it is an extraordinary violation not only of all international law, but of American law. This sort of assertion that Washington makes that every country on earth is subject to Washington's law is nonsensical. No other country has ever made such an assertion. And so I see it as a shameful uh, act of a rogue government that does not belong in office. Now, what was its purpose? I think what Trump said to steal back the Venezuelan oil. I think this has been uh, an agenda for the United States government for many years because it was in the 1970s that the Venezuelans nationalized their oil and took it away from the American oil companies. And not just their oil, but other of their resources. And we have felt that we deserved to loot the country and that they did not deserve to benefit from their own resources. So when Trump publicly announced that we're going there to take back our oil, in other words, he believes that Venezuela's national assets belong to him or to the United States. Well, this is a form of looting that is in more blatant form than the United States has displayed in previous episodes of looting the Latin American, South American countries. So it is a very big step in the wrong direction. Now, what is the effect of the seizure of Maduro to be? It is to intimidate what government takes its place, to cooperate with the Trump regime and allow it to be run from Washington as Washington runs many Latin American countries. The United States runs these countries through their own governments. And that's what Trump is trying at this stage with the woman who is serving as the president of Venezuela. Now, she shows resistance. In the meantime, the Americans will be there bribing everyone, bribing all the generals, the military, the courts, the justices, handing out hundreds of millions of dollars to create a situation in which the Venezuelan government cannot resist cooperating with Washington. That, I think, is the plan. If that plan fails, I don't know whether or not the U.S. military will attempt to invade Iran. I mean, Venezuela, invade Venezuela. There are jungles there. It's a large country. We did not fare well in Vietnam, where there are jungles. We did not fare well in Afghanistan, and an invasion of Venezuela, much less also of Colombia, Cuba, Mexico, is beyond the capability of the United States military and would lead to a striking defeat. We would just be decimated in the expanse of territory and in the jungles. We'd never be able to concentrate any force. And so I just don't know. So it may be a gamble on Trump's part. He may also be relying on the impression that he must have bribed Maduro's guards to allow this to happen, because previous attempts by the United States to snatch people proved unsuccessful. And so he may hope that doubts have been raised in the minds of the members of Maduro's government that will cause mutual suspicions among them, that some of them may have uh, facilitated the kidnapping of the president and the first lady. I think from what we know now, that's about the best account that I can give of it. Certainly, Trump hasn't reduced the pressure he is putting on the interim president in Venezuela, and he's added to it pressure that he has put on the president of Colombia, on Cuba, and on the president of Mexico. And he has threatened all of them in brazen terms, telling the president of Colombia to, quote, watch his ass, close quote. Well, this is not a diplomatic way of speaking, and it shows that the doctrine of American hegemony, relying on militarism, is still alive and well in Washington, and that National Security Advisor Tulsi Gabbard was mistaken when she declared that the era of American regime change was over. Um, it's not over. And as I said, I think Trump's first approach to regime change in Latin America is to coerce the governments to serve American interests. Leave them in place, but be sure that they are doing as they are instructed from Washington. If memory serves, and I may be mistaken, this seems to be the way that we are controlling Argentina at the present time. I believe that I read, it's not something I've been following, so I'm unsure, that Washington recently gained control of Argentina by purchasing the entirety of the Argentine national debt. So, in other words, they couldn't pay their debt, so we purchased it and parked it somewhere, and through this operation, achieved control. Now, what I read may have been a fairy tale. As I say, this is a bit outside the areas I pay attention to and cover, and so I haven't investigated that. But it makes sense. It certainly could be a way that Washington would take control of Argentina. So what we see is kind of a different form of regime change than we did in Ukraine, where we caused a rebellion, we caused shots to be fired, we caused the Ukrainian government not to use force, a decision backed up by the Russians themselves, and the government was actually overthrown. But this new way of overthrowing governments is we'll leave you alone in office and make you rich as long as you act as our agent. So that I think is the new way of having regime change.
How do you see the Israeli role in what has happened in Venezuela? Why are they so happy about, the kidnapping of Maduro in Venezuela? What is their game in Latin America?
Well, that question, one answer to that question, or one possible answer, is so controversial that it can't really be said. Many people over the decades who pay attention to Israeli manipulations have argued, and I can't say whether or not they are correct because I haven't, it's not a field I have studied and have any competence to issue an opinion. But they have argued that the primary goal of Israel is to destroy the United States. They see the United States as the great white Gentile power that eventually will be in the way of Israeli domination, particularly in the Middle East, where they have their dream of greater Israel. People have argued that the Israelis have systematically undermined American society. They argue that the Israelis removed Christian symbols from public life. They fostered and encouraged pornography and sexual promiscuity, the destruction of the chastity of women. The they advocated misogyny, mixed marriage, the disappearance of white people through intermarriage with black people. That they have undue control over the media, where they control the narratives. They have undue control over universities, where they determine the curriculum, and that the main function of American, indeed all Western universities for decades, has been denunciation of their own societies. Um, these sorts of claims that are made um, are one possible answer, that the Israelis are simply undoing the blonde, blue eyed white supremacists, the Nazis, that are a threat to them. Another, a less controversial explanation is that if we are at war and the military security complex is again uh, alive with profits, it's easier to spread the war. And I'm sure they have in mind Iran. Uh, I never saw any report of what the purpose of Netanyahu's recent visit to the White House, the fifth this year. I've not seen any account of what this was about or what they decided. Maybe I just missed it. You know, there's so many things going on and holiday season, and it's easy not to notice things. But I suspect it was more pressure to attack Iran. And since the alleged protests in Iran are all over the Western media, is a massive thing, outpouring of people. And Trump used this image of the situation in Iran to declare that if the Iranian government takes any violent action against the protesters, the Americans are coming in. And Trump's exact words were, "We are locked and loaded and ready." Well, it's very easy for Americans to have shots fired, just as they did in Kiev during the Maidan Revolution. They can very easily have shots fired in Iran, and then that's Trump's excuse. So, um, from the standpoint of Israel, which is extremely militaristic, having America militaristic as well, it just plays into their hands. I did see just the other day that the Israeli Channel 12, this is an Israeli news source inside Israel, uh, reported that the Israeli government had put the military on alert for a possible war against um, the Houthis, against Lebanon, and against Iran at the same time. That they were being prepared for a major offensive on all remaining Muslim opponents to Israeli domination of the Middle East. Now, this is an Israeli news report. It's unusual for Israel to tip its hand like that. And it could well be they took the risk of telegraphing their intentions in order to prepare the American people for their support of Israel. And so, what we have today, to sum this up, we have the United States creating the image of tyranny in Iran, and that millions of Iranians are in the streets demanding the overthrow of their government. The Trump regime has also created the image that Mexico, Cuba, Colombia, Venezuela are all engaged in a narcotic attack on American youth, and that this is an effort to destroy our country, and that we have to take forceful action against these Latin American countries that are attacking us with narcotics. So is clearly a militaristic approach. And in addition, we have the declaration just made by Stephen Miller, the primary spokesman in the Trump regime for American foreign policy, that it was the official position of the United States government that Greenland belongs to the United States and that no nation can do anything to prevent American annexation of Greenland. Well, Greenland, of course, is a part of Denmark. Denmark is a member of NATO. Um, Under the NATO treaty, the United States government is committed to defending the integrity of Denmark. And yet, here is Trump saying he has the right to steal part of Denmark. Now, it's possible that the consequences of this will destroy NATO. It's also possible, if Trump proceeds in the face of opposition, even from the American puppet state of the UK, where the Prime Minister Starmer has come out against the United States stealing part of Denmark. It's entirely possible that the Europeans will realize that that Trump is not content just to loot South America. He intends to loot Europe as well. And then what could happen? Europe could ally with Russia in order to get protection against the United States. Now, this sounds far-fetched, but it's entirely possible. Trump shows such disdain for his own allies that we can't expect them to take that forever. We can't expect them to wonder, what does NATO mean when the United States attacks a NATO member whose integrity the United States is committed to protecting. Now, as you can see, the possibility of things going very wrong are real. And how is it that nobody in the Trump government has said, hey, what about this? What about that? What about this? How is this going to play out for us? It shows the control of the Jewish power. Stephen Miller is Jewish. His wife is Jewish. She recently posted a picture online, a map of Greenland draped in an American flag. And Miller, who is regarded as the architect of Trump's agenda, has stated unequivocally that the official position of the Trump administration is that Greenland belongs to the United States. Well, to wind this up, how does this look to the Kremlin? So committed to negotiating a peace with Trump. I How can the Kremlin continue to fool itself that it can negotiate with Trump, who's turned on a NATO ally, who's turned on 4 governments in South America? At some point, the Russians are going to have to realize that they're at war and that all of this peace talk was nothing but a big deception. And if they continue to fall for these transparent deceptions, they're history.